Welcome to the Story True channel, where wildly interesting and true stories await you, and Ben at the microphone. Enjoy watching. Story 1, Yuri, as always, had the same nightmare. Here they are, very young 18-year-old boys were taken to training in Fergana. You can clearly feel the taste of white, creaky viscous dust on your teeth and the unbearably scorching sun in this alien, hostile and incomprehensible country called Afghanistan, and sticky fear of the unknown creeps into every cell of the body. Here he is already the commander of an anti-aircraft installation in an airborne regiment. In his last special operation Magistral, he led his fighters, encouraging, "Don't drift, lads, let's show those damned spirits." They believed him, they followed him. They ran into a minefield, and the Taliban met them with dense fire from advantageous positions. The last thing Yuri remembered was a flash as bright as lightning, and pain tearing his body into 1,000 pieces. The man screamed from hellish, unbearable pain and woke up, drenched in cold sweat. God, how the heel is numb and the leg is aching. There is no strength, he thought, and threw back the covers. And again, a terrible reality covered him. There was no foot. Only a stump wrapped in bandages stuck out above the knee. He clenched his teeth to the point of pain, to the gnashing, and barely restrained himself so as not to howl in despair, because the same wounded poor fellows were dozing nearby. A tear treacherously rolled down his prickly, unshaven cheek. The soldier quickly wiped it away with his sleeve, while no one was watching. The only kindred soul who was waiting for him in civilian life was Oleshka's bride. While Yura was in the hospital, she wrote touching letters to him, worried, supported. The man did not dare to confess to her what kind of injury he had, sincerely hoped that he loved and would accept him in any way. Yura lost his parents 2 years ago, just before the army. They tragically died in the mountains. An avalanche came down. Despite the fact that they were seasoned and experienced geologists, the mountains took them forever. It was from that moment, as it seemed to the guy, that some kind of evil fate and a series of misfortunes hung over him. Upon returning home, the first thing he rushed to his Olechka. He shaved, put on a dress uniform with the wards, bought the most expensive bouquet of flowers and rang the doorbell with bated breath. Beloved went out of the door, such an adult, with the fashionable haircut, and looked dumbfounded at his crutches and tucked up an empty trouser leg. He grabbed her in an armful, hugged, kissed, and could not get enough of it. But she stood as if rooted to the spot, then quietly asked, "Yura, do you have no legs at all?" "Yes, the damned Afghan patted me. But don't think, I'm strong. They promised to make a prosthesis. They gave me a medal for bravery." "You won't leave me for this, will you?" he asked apprehensively, trying to read everything from his eyes. But Olga took them aside, freed herself from the embrace, and in a breaking voice uttered the most terrible words for our hero, which he was most afraid to hear. "Wait, Yura, you understand, I cannot do this. I am young, I want a family, children. And you? Well, now you're a cripple for life. What is your family like? You probably need care. Don't come here anymore, don't." And she tried to slam the door. In anger, he banged on the door with all his might and shouted, "How can you do that? You said you love. Will you wait?" "But what about in sorrow and joy? I didn't think you were." Olga's mother ran out to the cry, assessed the situation, quickly orientated herself. "Alia, go to the house. And you, Yura, listen to what I say. Of course, I am very sorry for you, but Oleshka is not to blame for what happened. What are you condemning her to? What will it be like for her to hang around with a worthless invalid all her life? Don't break her fate. Leave." And slammed the door shut with force. Yuri did not move away from such a terrible betrayal. This was the last straw in his already difficult fate. The Council of Veterans was also greeted with coolness. True, they made a prosthesis. They gave a small room in a communal apartment on the outskirts. They had to sell their parents after their death. Everything went to their search and funeral. A small pension was accrued, but they didn't help with work. They just shrugged it off. "Well, you understand, Yuri, you ran back your own. Now the 90s, and you won't find a healthy place. Well, where will we attach you?" In an instant, the Afghan hero, a young and healthy guy, turned into a cripple in the dregs of society, which no one cares about. Yuri could not stand it and broke loose, From grief and hopelessness he drank black. Many years flew by unnoticed. Half of them he did not remember in a drunken stupor. Yuri completely spat on himself, did not shave, glowered himself, spun daily at the station, near the cafe. He often helped the local saleswoman Tamara. Sometimes he carried boxes, sometimes he carried bags. An uncomfortable prosthesis helped a lot. She felt sorry for the man, fed him whenever possible, loved to talk about life with him and, of course, saw in his honest and sad eyes that he was not a bastard, not a criminal and not a finished drunk, but simply a man with a broken and difficult fate. There can be no bad person who feeds the last crumbs of all the cats and dogs in the area. It was the end of February. A very small boy of 6 years old ran up to Yuri, dressed in a filthy jacket of huge size with sleeves rolled up 3 times and rubber boots. And this was in severe frost. The kid wiped his squelching nose with his sleeve and moaned, holding out his thin hand, "Uncle, give me some bread, please. Since yesterday my stomach has been growling." Yuri broke off a piece of loaf and handed it to the kid. "And where are you from here, the shooter, and even undressed? Where are your parents?" he asked. The boy greedily finished the loaf and said, "I ran away. My mother died recently, although she often disappeared. She loved me and did not offend me. She called me a hare, and my stepfather was a bastard. He beat me hard, made me beg for alms, and he bought bitter. I hate drunks, and I'm warming myself on the heating main. You don't hand me over to the police, Uncle. I'll run away from the orphanage anyway." Something skipped a beat and turned over in the man's soul, hardened over the years of wandering. The first impulse was to take the boy to his little room, because he would disappear on the street, and he was coughing like that. But suddenly he remembered how dirty his house was, dust and a bunch of bottles. Only bring a child. Then he bought sweet hot tea and a cabbage pie for the baby, threw his pea coat over him and said, "You know, let's agree, come here tomorrow, and I'll think of something. Maybe the two of us won't get lost. My name's Yuri. I'm Sasha." "Okay, I'll come." The man limped briskly into his lair. For the first time in all these years, he didn't buy alcohol and didn't want to drink. He began to clean up, then started washing, cooked fresh soup, washed a mountain of dry dishes. Housing acquired quite a tolerable look. The next day, Yuri was at the station in the morning, like a bayonet. "I waited until dinner. The boy was not there." He got agitated, asked the merchants and local loaders. They suggested which heating main the kid was spending the night on. The disturbed man went there. On a pile of old rags and cardboard, covered with his pea coat, lay Sanka. "Are you sick, baby?" And Yuri touched the boy's head. It was very hot. The boy did not answer. He tossed about in delirium. There was no time to think and decide something. Yuri somehow wrapped the baby in a jacket and limped to Tamara in a cafe, called the woman. "Tom, come here. Your help is needed. This kid is dying." Oh, poor thing. "I probably caught a cold." "What a dog cold. We need to call an ambulance, or take him to the city children's hospital." The woman wailed. "We can't take him to the hospital. He ran away from the sadist stepfather. They would immediately take him to the orphanage." Sanka begged not to hand him over. Yuri lamented. "Come on, you bring the kid home, get warm faster, and I run to the familiar paramedic. She is a proven person, she will be silent," the woman commanded. By common efforts, the boy somehow got out, the fever subsided, an appetite appeared, and Sasha began to recover. During this time, Yuri became so attached to the boy, carefully looked after him, bought some clothes and normal food, and even a small set of soldiers with the pension he received. They laughed, played war games. The boy repeatedly asked Yuri, looking into his eyes like a devoted puppy, "You won't leave me, will you? I want to live with you. You are like a folder to me." The man had a lump in his throat and his heart warmed. He put Sasha on his knees, ruffled naughty whirlwinds and calmed. "I won't give you up to anyone. I can't be alone now." Yuri did not even remember drinking. He had the meaning of life and the desire to get out of bed in the morning. Well, what about? The kid needs to cook breakfast. The man began to think about how to arrange custody of the boy. He knocked on the thresholds of social services, asked for a testimonial in the Council of Veterans. They told him with one voice, You are an unemployed disabled person. How will you raise a child on a meager pension? Now, if you got married and got a job, you might think. Yuri decided to take a chance. He liked Tamara for a long time. She is not married, childless, hard to go alone. She is a kind, economic woman, but the fact that she is unsightly in appearance is nothing. He is also not handsome, and even unelegant. The man dressed up, shaved, bought a violet in a pot from the granny in the passage, and limped to her store. Tamara was stunned, and at first did not understand what was happening. She had never seen Yuri like that, fresh, cheerful, the eye burns, even fell in love. The man did not play up, he said as it is. Tom, I have serious business with you. I want to adopt Sasha. They said, I need to get married. I like you for a long time. Can we get married? Don't think, I haven't been drinking for a long time. I'll help you, take care of you, and I'll come in handy on the farm. I know how to make wood, chop firewood, and Sasha is a good boy, you will get along. It's a pity the little one, it's gone. And I got attached to him, you know. And he looked pleadingly at the woman. Tamara laughed to tears. Yuri broke everything inside. Olga remembered with her mockery. He already mentally scolded himself for having decided on such a thing. Who needs him, poor cripple. Finally the woman calmed down, stopped laughing and took the violet. Wow, who makes such an offer? You can immediately see. Martinet. Come on, flower, little groom. I agree. I didn't even dream of a family, but here my husband and son are at once. Well, in the evenings, I want to howl from loneliness and longing, to talk, to share, and even then there is no one with whom. And we will raise Sasha, it will be no worse than others. Yuri beamed, and in a fit of feelings awkwardly hugged his future wife. The couple signed, moved to live with Tamara. She has a more spacious, private house. They started a household, put the garden in order. She arranged for her husband to be a loader in her cafe. Yuri's room was rented to a student for little money. In the end, having gone through 7 circles of bureaucratic hell, they managed to get custody of Sasha. Neighbors at first mocked the woman. They say, out of hopelessness, she coveted a cripple, and even sheltered someone else's child. It is still unknown what will grow out of him, someone else's blood. But after looking at how everything was going well with them, oh well. They even began to envy a prominent man, a non-drinker, and lameness almost not noticeable. Life slowly improved. Yuri and Toma lived in love, both over 40, not the age to sort things out, and both of them were drunk on sorrows in life. Therefore, they valued simple everyday human joys, joint tea drinking, care and support for each other, because it was a novelty for both. Sasha went to school, studied well, turned out to be smart and pleased his parents with good grades. One thing upset him, his peers mocked him very much, offended him often, shouted angrily, "Ha ha, son of a cripple and a bum, don't befriend him," and turned away contemptuously. The boy was angry and threw himself at the offenders with his fists. My folder is not a bum, he is a hero. He was in the war, and you are all fools. He defended his father's honor. Yuri did his best to smooth the situation. Son, you do not pay attention, they are stupid, soulless. Most importantly, know that my mother and I love you and will not let anyone offend. When you grow up, you become a lawyer or a judge, as you dream, and you will act according to conscience. School years flew by quickly. The last bell rang. Yuri was just busy in the garden when his panting wife ran up to him. Look here, a letter from the police came. It turns out that our Sasha has a relative. He is looking for him. Everyone was shocked. It turned out that the boy has a very rich grandfather, a well-known owner of industrial enterprises in the capital. His son was a good for nothing, loafer and reveler. He died early, and his maiden, Sashikan's mother, hid her pregnancy and drove off to another city. She herself was a walking woman. She gave birth to a boy and 5 years later she died after another drinking bout, while Sasha and his stepfather remained. He did not know what to do with someone else's child. He was a burden to him, so he drove evil on him regularly. How to get drunk. No matter how much the grandfather tried to find his grandson, it was all to no avail. And then suddenly the answer to the request came in the affirmative. The gay, of course, was not against such a relationship and his grandfather's proposal to move to the capital to live, after all, such prospects and opportunities. Decided to go to law. Parents were happy for the guy. He will break out into people, he will become a man, on the one hand. Only it was very painful to leave. They two were alive. Tom quietly cried so that no one would see, and drank heart drops. Yuri also became sad. They put their whole soul into the guy, always together, how to live now. But they didn't show it. They encouraged their son so that he wouldn't blame himself for anything. That's right, son. You will learn, you will get a good education, your grandfather will help with work. What is here? No prospects. Right. Daunted doubt. They saw off their son, sat on the porch, wept. What, my old woman? We will now spend a century together. Our grey-winged dove has flown away. And the man kissed his wife. Nothing, Yurika. As long as everything works out for him there. A year has passed. Yuri and Tom were already barely able to cope with the household. Their health was failing. The man was limping very badly. He could no longer be without crutches. Tamara was often sick. Her age was respectable. She no longer had the strength to keep the household. When a huge black limousine drove up to the gate, the old people thought that someone had the wrong address. The neighbors came out to see who is this rich guy who came to them. Sasha got out of the car. He was unrecognizable, in a stylish, expensive suit, tall, mature and fit. Toma gasped, threw up her hands and trotted over to the guy, sobbing, "My son, Shurik has arrived. I already thought, I will not live, I will not see more." He hugged his mother tightly, went up to his father and shook his hand. "Hi, Dad. I'm so bored." A large crowd of onlookers gathered around. Sasha said, "Mom, Dad, I came for you. I'm taking it with me. I bought you a cozy apartment in a quiet area. There is a clinic, a square nearby. I will take care of you and help you. And for starters, you go to a sanatorium, rest, heal. After all, you picked me up from the street, raised me, made me a man. It's time for me to pay my son's debt. Get ready for now, and I'll go to school. There is a meeting of graduates today, and good classmates didn't even invite me. Well, at least Margarita Semyonovna, my favorite teacher, called." All the neighbors opened their mouths, whispering. Shyorakov was lucky in his old age. Just like in the movies. When a huge black limousine famously rolled up to the gates of the school, everyone turned around. Sasha came out with a huge basket of scarlet, stunningly beautiful roses, walked past his classmates, and handed flowers to the class teacher. "Margarita Semyonovna, this is for you, from Shurik. I am very grateful to you for your knowledge, support, patience and understanding. Only thanks to you and my parents I waited until the end of the fun training." The teacher even shed a tear. "Sashenka, what a handsome man he has become, a man at all. How did you go to college the way you wanted to?" "Thank you, it's great. I study in law, in Moscow. This is my dream." "Good luck." Margarita Semyonovna wished. The boys whispered, "Who is this? Is there something we don't know?" Sasha proudly raised his head and said, "Well, it's me, Sasha, the son of a cripple and a homeless man." "But why don't you sneer contemptuously and don't turn away, or is status, expensive car and clothes everything for you?" "Oh you." And without waiting for stupid questions, he got into the car and left. Walking along the shady alleys of Yalta, between palm trees and cypresses, and for the first time in their lives seeing the sea, huge, blue and boundless, Yuri and Tamara simply could not find words of admiration. It seemed to them that they died and went to heaven. Before that everything was fabulous. Sasha cheerfully told them about the city, showed them everything in the sanatorium, and was glad that he could please his parents at least in his old age, make them pleased so that they would see a different life in their lifetime. Tom hugged her son and said without holding back her tears, "Sasha, dear, thank you for everything. You showed such beauty, you care. Now it's not scary to die." Yuri also did not lag behind his wife, even began to limp less. "They raised a great guy." "Tell me, mother." Sasha smiled. "I remember everything, even though I was small. If not for you, I would have died on that heating main. And this set of soldiers will forever remain in my memory as the most valuable and desired gift. I know how hard it was for you. They saved the last penny so that I would dress like the others. They bought a phone. They always cared and understood. So thank you. Of course I love my grandfather, but you will always be the dearest people for me. Life is sometimes very harsh with us, and presents terrible surprises, but despite all the hardships, you need to have a good heart and help your neighbor, not offend the weak, and in any situations remain human. Story 2. The wind gently lifted the leaves from the asphalt and twisted them into a whirlwind. The first autumn days were warm, and Angela came to the park to admire the swans on the pond. She was tormented by remorse because of a quarrel with Dmitri. They are only 3 months together, and a black cat runs between them every now and then. And Angela cannot understand what is the reason. Either there is something wrong with her, or her boyfriend thinks too highly of himself. Looking at the majestic birds, at their proud and imperturbable look, Angela reassured herself that not everything was lost yet. At least if in their relationship with Dmitri has a prospect, then you should not miss it. Out of the corner of her eye, the girl noticed how the guy in the wheelchair was also watching the birds. The carriage stood right next to the water and it seemed to Angela that she was about to roll right into the icy water. The guy sat hunched over, his hands folded on his knees, completely motionless and staring unblinkingly at the water. Angela resolutely got up from the bench and ran up to the guy, taking the stroller by the handles. She rolled it back from the water with some difficulty. You got so close to the water. It's dangerous. It's quite deep here. The water is icy. You could die. The guy looked at the girl unfriendly. What do you care? This is my life. I can dispose of it as I see fit, right? Angela carefully looked at the guy. You are right. This is your life. It looks like you are in a difficult situation, but do you really think there is no way out? The what-room girl rolled the stroller towards the bench, put it next to it and sat down. Their faces were on the same level. Excuse me, maybe I'm interfering in my own business. What happened to you? I can help you. The guy lowered his head, but with bitterness in his voice, nevertheless, replied, this is my own business and you don't need to know what I was going to do. Yes, maybe I'm tired of living, although life doesn't turn out to be my miserable existence. Angela didn't say anything. The guy was silent for a bit and continued, at this place, Nastya and I once admired the swans. For a long time in that other life, we dreamed that we would be together in grief and joy. The guy swallowed a lump that came up to his throat, but it didn't work out. She left me after what happened to me. No, I don't blame her act at all, because living with a disabled person is another test, which not every woman can withstand. Putting her hand under her chin, Angela said thoughtfully, you're right, your girlfriend didn't pass the test. So you didn't either? Not quite so, but I confess, there is already little strength left. After a short pause, the guy extended his hand to the girl. We have been talking so much, but we never met. My name is Igor. It's very nice, but I'm Angela and let's immediately switch to you, otherwise it's somehow uncomfortable. Okay, Angela. And I live nearby, but to be more precise, I am on treatment in a boarding house for abandoned cripples. I don't have any parents, I'm a former orphanage, and I also have friends, although I once had them, but they didn't either pass the test of adversity. By the way, I also noticed that you are upset. It seems that life throws up problems. Angela sadly agreed. We've only been together for 3 months, and we fight almost every day. We don't understand each other at all. We argue about everything. Dmitri is a very authoritarian person. He wants everything to be just the way he wants. Deciding who to be friends with, what dress to wear and how many times a month to meet with my parents. Is that right? Igor responded with fervor. No, it's impossible. Lovers should not behave like this, otherwise why such a union without a future? Tapping his hands on the handles of the stroller, Igor said, and this is my future. 2 years ago, there was an accident in which many people were injured. I lay for 2 hours in a pile of twisted metal. As a result, hospitalization, several operations and unbearable agony of realizing one's worthlessness. In fact, no one took care of me. No one cared. I am a pupil of an orphanage. There are no bank accounts, rich patrons too, so they quickly got rid of me, and everything would be fine. I endured it, but when Nesnya announced that she would not live with a cripple, I was knocked down. I hated the world, stopped thinking about life, and from hopelessness decided on why you saved me now. Well, what are you, Igor? Listen, something has become cool. Let's sit in a cafe. The guy, embarrassed, agreed, and Angela, holding the handles of the stroller, drove Igor towards the exit from the park, where the Skazka Cafe was located across the road. Having rolled the stroller to the table, the girl made an order and 10 minutes later it was brought. Igor shyly said, "Don't blame me, but my disability pension is not so big that I can afford lunches in a cafe. In the boarding house we have a modest menu, but I don't complain. I have enough, and I don't go hungry." Pushing the saucer with the cake closer, Angela replied sternly, "Eat and do not refuse. I treat you." Taking a small spoon, Igor proceeded to dessert and then, quite unexpectedly, his sleeve and his right arm pulled up. Angela saw a silver bracelet in the form of fancy rhombuses. She became interested in what kind of thing it was, and she asked, "Did you buy this bracelet yourself or did you give it as a gift?" To which Igor replied detachedly, "This is a present from my former teacher. She was just about to retire and decided to do me a favor with some kind of keepsake. At the same time, she said that the bracelet protects and brings good luck." Here, only from the accident and the disability that followed it, he did not save me. I stopped believing in miracles, and I still wear it because I'm already used to it. After the cafe, Angela volunteered to accompany Igor to the boarding house. On the way, they talked on various topics and joked a lot, and despite the fact that just a couple of hours ago, the guy wanted to say goodbye to life, stopping near a gray and nondescript building, Igor loudly said, "That's it, stop, here is my abode." Looking at this boarding house, Angela almost cried. It looked like a haven for the homeless, shabby walls, wooden window frames, in some places sealed with a transparent film. Moreover, the steps at the entrance looked like they had been hacked with a jackhammer. "And this is our reality," Angela thought. "Well, okay, then I'll go and thank you for the pleasant company." Angela was moving away towards the bus stop, and the guy did not take his eyes off her shoulders and back, along which thick black hair fell. He was mesmerized by her every move. It seemed that the girl was not just walking, but floating like a swan on a pond. And at that moment, Igor realized that he had fallen in love. It only took him one date with Angela to want to live again and not give up such a happy feeling as love. Igor perfectly understood that he had no chances, but he could not even imagine how this meeting would turn out, and what would await him ahead. Angela could not know about it, but she soon had a chance to remember something that completely turned her life upside down. But there was also an unpleasant moment. The same Dmitri, Angela's lover, watched their meeting, and he was extremely surprised that she was spending time with some guy in a wheelchair. Naturally, he did not consider him an opponent, but the fact that Angela had secrets from him infuriated him in earnest. At full sail, Dmitri raced to her house to find out who this guy was. Overtaking other cars, he was soon in the right yard. 20 minutes passed before the girl appeared from around the corner of the house. Without hesitation, not a minute, Dmitri went up to her and unceremoniously grabbed her hand. "And how is this to be understood, my love? As soon as we had a little quarrel, and you are already in the arms of another man. Who is he? I want to know who this guy is." Swinging and punching him, slapping him, Angela muttered angrily, "It's none of your business, you're just being nasty. And by the way, I saved a man's life, only you still won't understand it. As it turned out, you don't have such a feeling as compassion. I don't want to see you, and in general, it's better for us to leave." Dmitri became furious and shouted furiously, "Well, go to this invalid. You will take ducks out from under it and feed it with a spoon. But keep in mind that I will not accept returns of used goods." The last words plunged Angela into real horror, and she, not embarrassed by her neighbors, loudly said, "I will, and it's better than living with such a scoundrel as you." Turning abruptly, she made her way to her front door. Running to the third floor, Angela stopped and only now began to cry. She was not only offended, but disgusted to hear such words to herself. And he did not even apologize, did not try to find an excuse for himself. Looking out the window between the floors, Angela saw Dmitry walking to his car and at the same time talking nicely on the phone with someone. It seems that the scandal in the courtyard did not embarrass him at all, but on the contrary, provoked him. On this day, Angela rethought a lot, and first of all, the fact that Dmitry is now forever in the past for her. Having prepared a light dinner for herself, she did not even watch her favorite series, but immediately, after eating, went to bed. Today's meeting with Igor ignited in her exactly that feeling of tenderness that had been warming deep inside all this time and waiting in the wings. It was not at all like the feelings she had for Dmitry. She wanted to help, protect, warm and comfort Igor, give him happiness that would fill the lives of both of them. Angela felt a sense of pity and compassion, but did not yet understand that there was only one small step from them to love. At the same time, she was haunted by the bracelet that she saw on Igor's hand. Confused thoughts and images flashed through her head, but she still couldn't remember where she could have seen him before. So without remembering anything, Angela closed her eyes and fell asleep. In the morning she got up earlier than usual. Having had a quick breakfast, 15 minutes later the girl was already on the bus to her favorite job. She worked as a designer in an advertising agency. In the evening, when Angela left the office, she did not go home, but to that boarding house. She suddenly wanted to see Igor again, and he did not keep himself waiting. He appeared at the door as soon as he was informed that he had guests. Igor later admits that he did not sleep that night, dreaming of a meeting, and a miracle happened. They were walking in the park again and talking merrily about something. There was no specific theme. Everything went spontaneously. From the side it seemed that this married couple went for a walk. Such an idol could only be envied. Angela seemed to blossom before our eyes, and Igor completely idolized his savior. From that day on, the girl came to him almost every day. She no longer had thoughts about how Dmitry was there and what he was doing. This went on for more than a week, until one day, the ex-boyfriend again reminded of himself. He ambushed Angela and Igor near the spreading maple tree in the park. Cautiously, like a fox, Dmitry approached them from behind and loudly, with a sly laugh, said hello, two misfortunes. Didn't expect to see me? Angela shuddered and, turning around, angrily replied, you are completely crazy. Calm down. So scared? And why are these misfortunes? Everything is in order with us and we are good with each other. Nervously laughing, Dmitry said angrily, well, yes, two pair of boots, one left, the other right, and both are crazy. Soon you will be riding your wheelchair together. Igor calmly replied, this is not your business. Since you lost, leave with dignity. Do not humiliate yourself to abuse. Anyway, you will not be able to return. Angela, angry, Dmitry said something that was generally impossible to say. That's right, you just have to hope for Angela. Nobody needs you, disabled person. Chew your porridge in a boarding house, and leave the girl alone. She didn't deserve the heavy burden of you. Igor's nerves failed and he, turning around on the spot, rolled out of the park. He didn't want to see anyone else that day, not even Angela. Meanwhile, between Dmitry and his savior there was a terrible scandal. Angela expressed everything that she thinks about him. Moreover, former classmates who suddenly appeared in the park forcibly took Dmitry away and made it clear how to behave with a girl. Frightened, Dmitry swore under an oath that he would never approach Angela again. The girl wanted to catch up with Igor, but he was already far away. She did not dare to go to his boarding house. They would not let him in anyway. Returning home, the girl cried for a long time. She was ashamed that Dmitry had insulted Igor so much. Thoughts about how to fix the situation immediately spun in my head. In addition, there was again a burning desire to find out what kind of bracelet it was. Burrowing into her pillow, Angela began to remember intensely where she could have seen him before, and then she seemed to be pierced by an electric current and she even turned pale. Exactly. He was with the guy who saved me. It turned out that when Angela and a group of classmates were returning from a trip to places of military glory, an accident occurred and the bus in which they were traveling flew into a ditch and overturned. It happened almost near their city. People fled from everywhere to get the children out. Some guy extended his hand to her. She didn't really remember his face, but she saw the same bracelet on his hand. Was it really Igor? Thinking about it, Angela still couldn't believe it was him. How could such coincidences exist? Why didn't they recognize each other then? Well, of course, a little more than 10 years have passed since that accident. Yes, and how could you remember his face, if there is turmoil around, cries and pleas for help? Angela was 16 then, and the guy who saved her, probably more. In any case, he did not look like a schoolboy. It was impossible to hesitate, and the girl, wiping her face from tears, jumped out of the apartment, got on the bus and went to the boarding house. But the staff of the institution only shrugged their shoulders. An hour and a half ago we saw him riding a wheelchair in the yard. We don't know, maybe to the store drove. He sometimes buys juice and buns there. With their permission, Angela went into his room and found a drawing on the table, and a note next to it. Igor drew her image, and in the note he wrote, "Sorry, he's probably right and I don't deserve you. You won't be happy with the cripple." Angela was at a loss, but her intuition told her that she should go to the park, where there is a pond and swans. In a matter of minutes, she was in the park. Igor's stroller was in the same place. Breathing a sigh of relief, Angela ran up to him and hugged him tightly, saying, "Don't do this, Igor, I beg you. You saved me once." Turning to her, he showed his face, profusely flooded with tears. Angela couldn't help but cry too. "Well, remember, 10 years ago you saved a schoolgirl from an overturned bus. After all, it was you who extended a helping hand to me, and I saw that very bracelet on your hand. All these days I tried to remember where I had already seen him, and when it dawned on me, inside, everything turned upside down." And again she averted trouble from him, as if they were destined to take care of each other. Without delay, Angela agreed with the boarding house staff that she was taking Igor. On the same day, he moved to live with his savior. Together they felt an amazing attraction even more. Igor even remembered what her face was like when he saved her. It was the face of an angel, with blue eyes and big eyelashes. "Why didn't I recognize you right away?" "Probably, it was necessary so that I first passed the strength test." A few days later, Angela helped him find a part-time job via the internet. It turned out that he is a programmer by profession and is well versed in modern programs. In the boarding house, he did not have a powerful enough computer from which he could work remotely, and Igor did not even dream of buying one with his meager pension. Dmitri for Angela disappeared forever. She realized that it was a kind of life experience, and if it were not for the revealed nature of the ex-boyfriend, then she would never have met Igor. Now the lovers are thinking about how to officially sign. In addition, Angela hinted that she wants children. Igor is no longer embarrassed by his disability, because he has become needed by someone, and when there is a beloved and dear person next to you, then all adversity is on the shoulder. In the spring, when the swans returned to the pond, a young woman came to the shore. Putting her hand on her rounded belly, she looked at the snow-white birds for a long time. "Thank you, swans. You brought us happiness." Story 3. Liza, all in tears, went up to her neighbor's house and sat down on a bench. Covering her face with her hands, she not only continued to sob, but also cursed herself for what the world stands on. The mistress of the house, Valentina, looked out of the gate, and she felt uncomfortable when she saw the crying woman. "What is the matter with you? Who offended you?" Waving her hands contritely, she approached Elizaveta Petrovna and sat down beside him. Removing her hands from her face and straightening her disheveled hair on her head, she said through tears, "You won't believe it, Velia, but I was robbed." "No, not literally, figuratively, but still, it does not change the essence, and I feel very disgusting. Can you imagine? I'm a fool. I fell for advertising cursed windows and now I'm crying. The old windows have completely dried up and squinted. It's no joke. My house is already 70 years old. It's strong itself, but the trouble is with the windows. In winter it blows strongly, the gaps are such that don't plug it, it's cold. So I decided to put new ones." The money she collected for her funeral was just enough. "I found an ad in the newspaper. Measurements are free and a discount for pensioners." I called them. They rushed on the same day. They measured the windows, they showed the contract, all rank after rank, with all sorts of seals. I didn't really read it, but these men explained to me that if you take windows for a promotion, you need an advance payment, So I dumped all my money. They said they would come to install in a week. They are not there. Then another week. Again they do not go. I tried to call them, but no one answers. Valentina threw up her hands. Lord, what is this? We urgently need to go to them and take the money, otherwise it's already autumn. Soon the white flies will fly. How? To put windows? Shaking her head, Elizaveta Petrovna showed herself the fig. Here, Valusha, I won't see anyone else. You won't believe it, but I already went to the address that was written in the contract, and it's closed there. Moreover, such a company has never existed at all. It turns out that they just rented a room for a month. Probably, they also collected money from gullible pensioners and fled to hell. By the way, I met another woman who also suffered from them. So she told me that these crooks warmed her even more than me. Elizaveta Petrovna began to cry again, and Valentina, realizing what had happened, advised her to go to court. Looking at her with a frown, the neighbor barely smiled and said, well, yes, who should I apply for? They still need to be found. Velia, I believe the crooks and fell for their bait. At that moment, Paratrooper Boris Nikolaevich, who lived on a farm, passed by them. He was called that because he liked to walk around in a vest. But seriously, he had 2 decades of service in the airborne forces behind him. Turning towards the saddened women, the paratrooper asked, what a wonderful day, why are you so sad? Elizaveta Petrovna, I don't recognize you, always cheerful, but here, just like at a funeral, what happened? Instead, Valentina answered him, Boria, we are not in the mood for jokes now. There, you see, grief at Elizaveta Petrovna. Her swindlers have deceived. She ordered windows from them, and they took the money and disappeared. Taking it off, he takes it from his head. The paratrooper dejectedly said, what is this doing? Here are the bastards. They robbed the most gullible and defenseless, the elderly. There is nothing sacred for them. Apparently they are not afraid of anyone. Leaning against him, an elderly neighbor wailed, what are these scoundrels afraid of? They may and will be looking for them, although I doubt it very much, because Elizaveta Petrovna herself gave them the money, breaking heavily. Boris muttered, so, who knew they were scammers? Looking at him with eyes full of tears, Elizaveta Petrovna again repeated everything that she had previously told Valentina. After scratching the back of his head, and then, putting it back on, the paratrooper said, I'll drop by our district police officer and try to find out from him how you can find these windows. Saying goodbye to the woman, Boris walked towards the administration. But disappointment awaited him there. The district police officer not only could not help, but also shouted, what do you want from me, Boria? I'm not your investigative bureau. And what did Elizaveta Petrovna say? That's exactly what this company has long since washed away. Well, where can I find them? Yes. And it's not my job. Then you need to go to the city. Write a statement to the police, let them search. Everyone, Gober, do not interfere with my work. Annoyed by such an answer, the paratrooper said in his heart, you only know how to wipe your pants, Nikolai Ivanovich. All right, if the authorities can't do anything and don't want to protect ordinary citizens, then I'll figure it out myself. The district police officer, offended by such a remark, muttered, come on, I don't eat my bread in vain and I regularly carry out my service. And you look at me, no matter how later you don't have to sit down for such actions. Heading towards the exit, the paratrooper, without turning around, angrily replied, yeah, of course, I'll just sit down with you so that it doesn't get boring. Slamming the door, Boris left the office. At home, he explained everything in detail to his wife and began to gather in the city. He was impatient to find these crooks as soon as possible. At the same time, Boris understood that just like that, you simply couldn't catch them now. If these tricksters deceived a few gullible citizens, then it is obvious that ensured. True, in such a case, the paratrooper had Jaeger. He could find any office. It would fall into the ground at least 3 times. Boris decided to go to him in the first place. Don't worry, Petenka, I'll go back and forth. You won't even notice my absence. You understand? I cannot leave such meanness with impunity. Moreover, Elizaveta Petrovna, as a mother, has done so much good for us that it will be a shame if we don't help her now. Along the way, The paratrooper went to her to rewrite the name of the company and phone numbers from the contract. In response, Elizaveta Petrovna shook her head sadly. "But where can you find them, Boria? They have already changed both their signboard and their address." "Quit messing with me. It serves me right that I believe the scammers." However, the paratrooper was not going to stop. "No, if the district policeman does not want to move, this does not mean that I will sit idly by." "All right, do not be sad, Elizaveta Petrovna. I will find your offenders and punish them." Despite the fact that he was 55 years old, and he did not look young at all, Boris was a strong man who would give odds to any young man. After all, as they say, there are no former paratroopers. In the city, he met with Jaeger and told him about what had happened. He thought a little and replied, "You know, it's not so easy to find a company that, as you understand, has disappeared into nowhere. Usually, such people do not leave traces behind themselves, but sometimes the most cunning scammers are sometimes mistaken." In theory, they would now lay low or move to another city, but what the hell is not joking? All of a sudden they are still here. Greed sometimes so overshadows the mind that a person makes stupid mistakes. Well, let's look on the internet for fresh offers about installing Windows. While Igor was busy with the search, Boris brewed tea in the kitchen in a businesslike manner and made sandwiches. "How do you live alone, Jaeger?" "You can go crazy, I can't live a day without Mike Tenka." It was evident that Boris was directly flushed when he said the name of his wife. Say what you like, but the paratrooper idolized her. He not only loved his wife, but was also ready for crazy deeds for her. This was the whole essence of Boris: to love so much, to fly so to fly. The paratrooper prayed to God day and night that his Tenka would enjoy life as long as possible. Having taken a couple of sips from the mug, Boris asked in a matter-of-fact way, "Well, what is there, computer genius? Is there anything?" "Don't tell me these rascals have disappeared. I feel in my gut that they are somewhere nearby. You just have to look carefully." The foreboding of the paratrooper did not disappoint. Jaeger joyfully exclaimed, "Yes, here, Boris Nikolaevich, I thought that they were not far off." You see, a new ad on the same topic, and now pay attention to what is indicated in the company name and description. Laughing out loud, the paratrooper clutched his stomach. It seems that they have problems not only with money, but also with brains. So, read what they offer there, but for now I'll finish the sandwiches, if you don't want to. Having studied the company's price list, Jaeger said, "They have windows, doors, and even balconies." "But why do you need all this, Boris Nikolaevich? Do you really think that they will step on the rake twice and go to your area again?" With a wink at him, the paratrooper replied, "We'll kick out with the wedge what is stuck and doesn't want to get out." Greed, my friend. Greed is what will bring these bastards straight to us. In general, call them and tell them that you need windows, and interior doors, and a veranda. Yes, just a big veranda to glaze, a big and fat water in general. Igor, took Boris's request as a joke, but he said in all seriousness that he was not laughing. After a brief hesitation, he phoned the company and made a reservation over the phone. The secretary who answered his call wrote down the data and promised that measurers would come to him during the day. Naturally, the paratrooper ordered Jaeger to give his address. Without putting it off, Boris began to get ready for the return trip. Well, let's hope that these are the same crooks who deceived Elizaveta Petrovna. An hour and a half later, he was in the village, and in order not to get into a mess, he invited a cheated neighbor to his place. Elizaveta Petrovna did not understand until the last what all this was for, until she heard the sound of a car stopping near the house. Looking out the window, Boris called her to him. "Well, what do you say, Elizaveta Petrovna? Did these windowmen take your money?" The pensioner nodded her head in fright. "Exactly, Boria, these parasites measured my windows, so after all, they also ripped off an additional feet, as if for increased comfort." Clapping his hands, the paratrooper quietly whispered, "Now I will give them such a warm welcome that they will remember for the rest of their lives." The measurers knocked on the gate, and Boris's wife opened it. And as soon as they crossed the threshold of the house, They were immediately dumbfounded when they saw Elizaveta Petrovna. It seems that the paratrooper turned out to be right and these scammers decided to try their luck again, since they were not afraid to come. On the other hand, the farm was located 2 kilometers from the village, and they probably expected that they would not meet the old woman they had deceived, especially since 3 months had passed for sure. But, apparently, they miscalculated, since Elizaveta Petrovna's memory did not fail her and she immediately recognized them. What happened next can be described as a sudden loss of consciousness. The cunning measurers fell to the floor, and the paratrooper, meanwhile, called a carpenter he knew and asked him to bring what he had ordered in advance. The whole village was on its ears when they found out that Boris decided to arrange a luxurious funeral for the swindlers. The crooks woke up already inside the wooden coffins. They immediately began a real hysteria, because mourning music was heard outside, and the sound of pouring earth was heard on the outer surface. They seemed to be buried and, realizing what was happening, they began to beat the lid with all their might. Then everything was quiet and the scammers thought they had been abandoned. With difficulty, but they knocked out the covers and in the eyes immediately, hit the sunlight. Wet with fear, the measurers crawled out of the coffins, but they were not allowed to leave. The locals were just waiting for their appearance. Grabbing both by the arms, they dragged them to the house of Elizaveta Petrovna. From the crowd of residents, a paratrooper approached them. "Well, parasites, will we return the money or continue the funeral?" They nodded convulsively. Yes, forgive us, we didn't know that you were her relative." Laughing, Boris angrily replied, "I know Elizaveta Petrovna very well, she is like a mother to me. And we all here respect her, and you decided to cash in on a pensioner. Yes, you are not something to be buried. You need to wall up in concrete." The money was returned to Elizaveta Petrovna immediately, and these measurers were taken to the police station. Those of course immediately split and their entire gang was immediately arrested. Moreover, the local district police officer was reprimanded for his inattentive attitude to the pensioners' complaint. So the story ended. It's good that there are people who are ready to stand up for the weak. No wonder they say, go around the bus behind, the tram in front, and the paratrooper away, though this does not apply to good people. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you tomorrow.